Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Q&A session. And I'm really excited about today, as I always am. It's always such a pleasure to get to come up with answers to any of your questions. And oftentimes, I'm actually learning quite a bit myself. In fact, every single time, there's something that I've discovered that really makes it valuable for both me and hopefully you guys. So that is really great to see. Welcome, friends, Marios. Medina, Soulful Lens, Zainab, Hiccups, Riani Images. Good to see you all. And while we're just saying hello and doing some waves, there's always a few questions that I usually miss, unfortunately, from last day. And one of them was this. Mark, what's the difference between AFC, AFA, and AFS? It's on the front of my lens. Now, I have answered this before. However, a lot of people haven't, most people obviously don't see all of these. So if you are wondering what those mean, they're usually on the front of your camera. It's a little switch. And sometimes people only have what's called AFS and AFC, and that would be autofocus single and autofocus continuous. And autofocus single is your default, usually, and that allows you to focus on anything that's either still or relatively slow moving. Now, AFC is autofocus continuous, and that would be anything that is moving fast, like if you're a sports photographer, like cars or a cycle race or runners or something like that. However, there's a third option that a lot of cameras have, and it's called autofocus A. And I think that all Nikons now have it, but I'm not sure about that. Autofocus A is autofocus auto, so you have two autos there, autofocus auto, and the camera intelligently decides if the subject matter is stable, not moving, or if the subject matter is in fact in motion and moving very quickly. And this is really good, especially if you are doing sports photography, but then you quickly change your position because maybe in the stands the crowd's doing the wave or something. They're relatively still. So you don't need that autofocus continuous. And that AFA will help you to work quickly because you don't have to worry about switching back and forth between single and continuous. Okay? Hopefully that helped. And if anyone has any more questions on that, let me know. And it's great to see all the nice waves. And also, I'd love to know where you guys are from in the world. Prashant, welcome. Freddie Bear, Laker, that's a great name. Ayaclops. Prashant says hello. Mario says hello. How are you, sir? Very good. Thank you. Every uh, every every Q&A session, I'm given my double espresso from my daughter, who is, by the way, at RN Sophia on Instagram. She's a great photographer. Check her out. Art by Greta Michelle. Welcome. Trinidad. Sounds good. Yusuf, welcome. Good to see you all. Freddie Bear Laker, hello. Hello, Mark. What a sunny day out there. Yes, it's wonderful. It's still chilly, but uh, as long as it's sunny for me, then that is really all I need. Sunny is so lovely. Austria, more Gabi, welcome. Good to see you all. If anyone's new, all you have to do is put your question, any type of question at all, photo, video, apps, editing apps, anything you want. I really am well versed in Lightroom. So if you have any Lightroom questions or Photoshop questions, I'm always happy to oblige. And also, another question I didn't get to yesterday. Mark, what does free lensing mean? I heard it before, but I have no idea what it refers to. Okay, so free lensing is really interesting. I tried it out many times actually, many years ago. And what it is, I should have a DSLR to show you all here, but you take the lens off your DSLR and you still take pictures even though the lens is off, but the lens is very close to the camera. So you twist it off and then you can take it off, but then you put it back on, but you don't put it on so it snaps or it clicks. You put it on so that you can slightly move it a little bit. And what you're going to get by doing this freelensing technique is some very weird defocused parts of your picture. And you can also do this for video. In fact, fine art filmmakers and a lot of filmmakers who do music videos do freelancing. And you can, when you're doing your video, you can actually, with your hand, rotate slightly your lens while your camera body is stable. And this creates the craziest warping, weird effects that actually looks pretty cool for fine art photography and also fine art videography. Now, there are certainly dangers to this. One is that dust will be attracted to your sensor because your lens is slightly off, so that's not good. You never want to do that in a dusty environment. Do it in a controlled environment if you want to, and the results are wildly unpredictable. So that's why you always look not through the viewfinder for a DSLR, but you would look on the back screen, and that will allow you to see the actual real-time effects using your live view. Okay, so if someone wants to try that, feel free. Maybe if you have tried freelancing and you know, tell us what you thought of it down in the comment section. I'm really interested. Okay, see what we have here. Hello from Bangalore. Great to see you live almost every day. Bangalore was my only introduction to the wonderful world of India, and I desperately want to go back. And my friend Ponkshiadi, can you please remind me what that market is in Bangalore that I went to? It's a fruit and vegetable market, and I think it's called Ashwindi, or that was a sign that I saw. And beside that market, there was the greatest inn that served real Bangalore food and the best food I ever had, probably. Aaron Sophia, good to see you. My wonderful barista. Hi, Mark. I'm on week 1 in Lightroom editing mastery course. I knew that I would enjoy the course after DCM. Thank you. Thanks to you. I am so happy to hear that. And of course, because you're in the Lightroom editing mastery online course, if you run into any problems, just send me a direct message because I want to make sure that anyone who's in any of the photo courses get well served. And by the way, there's you know, there's so much value I find in Lightroom, either classic or CC. I tend to promote CC mainly because my photo course is CC, and I feel that it's better for many reasons for a lot of people. Now, if you are a classic user, and you always have been, then don't ever feel the pressure, at least from me, to change to CC. You know, you're doing great with classic, keep going. But the reason why I suggest CC usually to people is because of its mobile and remote editing capabilities on your iPhone, Android, iPad, or tablet, the cloud syncing, and the ability to travel and still do excellent editing of your raw files, even remotely over a Wi-Fi connection, over, you know, even if you're in an ancient, what do they call those? Internet cafe. They're so old and they don't exist anymore in my area that I forgot the name of it. Yeah, so good. I'm very glad that you're enjoying it. And by the way, what DCM refers to is Digital Camera Mastery, and that is one of the courses that I teach for DSLRs and mirrorless at my website, markhemmings.com. Ekran joined. BT Philip. Alessandra, welcome, Alessandra. Okay, being nomadic. I love that name. I'm really surprised that you were able to get that, being nomadic, from Instagram, because I would have thought that would be gone like years and years ago. It would be a very popular Instagram name. You probably got that early on. George Scott, Prabhu. Sure, I'll find that info for you. I'm new to Bangalore, shifted from Mumbai recently. Excellent. Well, enjoy it. I'm also loving DCM, Molly Funk Photography. Really appreciate that, Molly. And Molly, as you're taking the Digital Camera Mastery course, always feel free to reach out to me if you run into any snags. And by the way, the Digital Camera Mastery course is sort of stage one of the 5 courses that I teach, and you can find them at markhemmings.com. And by the way, there's a new one, and it's made by Kelly Lawson and I, and it's called uh, Product Photography Mastery, and it's about getting amazing product photos cheaply without spending money to go or buy, goods for an actual photo studio. Vivid Snaps, good to see you all. Okay, Mark, this is from yesterday, by the way. Mark, I'm in the market for a Canon 50 millimeter lens because you talked about the 50 millimeter prime lens yesterday. And I see that there's many options. There's a 1.2, an f1.2 lens. And I was wondering if the extra cost is worth something as wide open as f1.2. Okay, great question. Now, interestingly, I've owned I haven't owned it, but my brother's filmmaking company, Hemmings House, owned the f1.2 50 millimeter Canon. It's an L series lens, and it was super expensive. And we bought it because that we actually thought we would use it for filmmaking, and I used it for photography quite a bit. However, the difficulty is that the f1.2, at least I don't think they've increased, I don't think they have a new version of that lens. If they do, it might be better. But at f1.2, using that 50 millimeter prime lens, the perimeter of the picture was not sharp. When I say the perimeter, I mean the edges of the frames. So, for example, let's just say that the Canon 50 millimeter f1.2 was photographing me right here. My face would be sharp, no problem at 1.2, but the perimeter, like up here and down here, would have a slight radial blur, which is not good. Now, I can understand why this is. Like f1.2 is extremely difficult for scientists and technicians and engineers to create. That's why it's so expensive. But then I was thinking, what the heck is the value of spending $600 more to get f1.2 compared to f1.4 or f1.8? Because to be honest, I was never even using that lens at f1.2. I would use it at f1.8 just to get that perimeter looking better. So I was wasting $600 for nothing. So if you are planning to get a 50 millimeter lens, don't ever be afraid to get the f1.8. It's inexpensive, it's readily available, you can buy it used often, and you're going to get great results. So I would sooner you guys get the cheaper f1.8 and save your money than to get the f1.4 or f1.2, simply because it's negligible how much value you're gonna get with that. Okay, hope that helped. Okay, Art by Greta Michelle. Is the product photography mastery course for pros or suitable beginners? It's for beginners and intermediates, and it's taught mainly for anyone who is just picking up a camera because they either have a product they sell on Etsy or any of the platforms to sell their products, or they are photographers or beginner photographers who want to learn how to photograph products for these people who sell on Etsy or any other marketing platform. Or it's useful for people who have their own stores and have products they want to photograph, but they don't know how to capture those photos, or they are food photographers working for making menus for restaurants, or restaurant owners themselves who don't want to hire photographers. So my that new product photography mastery course at my website markhemmings.com is for beginner photographers, but it's also applicable to amateur photographers as well. Thank you so much for that question. Okay, I'm just going to scroll here. 1 second, everybody. Dom Greco Photography, welcome. I have a silly question. By the way, no question is silly. I wear glasses and I'm constantly smudging my glasses when photo taking. I know what you're talking about. You wear glasses, so I'm curious if that happens to you as well. Yes, it does. What do I do? Well, I just live with it really. Um, and there's not much. I don't even know if there's a way around that, to be honest. And if anyone has an answer to that, please let us know. Now, it's true that a lot of people use their rear screen if they have eyesight issues, and often that rear screen helps them see a little bit better. But I don't use the rear screen because it sucks battery too much. So I always use my eyepiece. And yes, the eyepiece does go against my glass, and that is an issue. And I don't really carry around glasses cleaner, even though I should. So you and I both have that problem. And I haven't figured out, I think it's more so I just have to be diligent to bring iClass cleaner with me. Fire teacher, welcome. Art by Greta Michelle, excellent. Yeah. So if you have any questions, by the way, about the difference between those 5 online courses, always feel free to DM me or email me. Pam, good to see you. Pam, your photos of the moon are excellent, and I think we've now gone past all the full moon shots because I don't think it's out anymore. I haven't checked, but next moon, full moon time, whenever that may be in the future, I should definitely talk about getting good moon photography because it's very popular and it's really fun to photograph the texture of the moon. Mary, welcome. Okay, now, Mark, how do you keep your tripod? Sorry, Mark, how do you keep your iPhone or Android or whatever you use when you're doing these online sessions? And can you use them for iPhone photography like I like? Okay, so thank you for that. This is from yesterday, by the way. I use a desktop tripod, and in fact, I should probably show you everybody. What I'm going to do is just unscrew this right now. And this is my desktop tripod. And as you can see, it has a very convenient ratchet, not a ratchet, it's a screw-on apparatus. So I can hold my my iPhone, and has a tripod head and of course just the normal legs here. And this is really good because I can almost put it in my pocket, which I really like, and I do travel with it because professionally I'm also a mobile photographer, an iPhone photographer. So yes, I do need to do these, and also I do live stuff like this when I'm traveling as well. So that's what I like. It's really small and compact, and I even have a smaller version that actually does physically fit in my pocket, and that is really good as well. So, and this brand, by the way, is Neewer, Neewer. They're an online company. I don't think they sell in stores, to be honest, but I've been using their products for quite some time, and they're inexpensive and good quality. Otherwise, Manfrotto, Manfrotto, is an excellent Italian company that's just has every single tripod option you could ever want. So give that a try. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Ice smudge is real. Yes, it's so true. So true. Leander, welcome. Lucy Breveau, when are we going to get Samsung Academy course? I should probably invest in a Samsung to to be able to serve more than half of the population, probably. So keep pushing me on that. I should definitely learn how to use them. Okay. Pam says, "Wow, thank you. I'm humbled and honored." Yes, Pam. Yeah. By the way, so many people within this chat have such excellent photos on Instagram, and I'd encourage you, even though it's difficult to actually check these people, the regulars, because you're actually watching this on Instagram. However, you can actually go to your Instagram feed on your web on a browser while you're watching me, and feel free to type in some of these wonderful people like Pam Yap 0674 and Ryan and Justin, all these people, and just check out what they're doing. Augustine Ishikawa, check out what Augustin Ishikawa is doing. And it's really fun to be able to see and get inspiration from all of these people. Mary, what lens do you use for the moon photography? I tried yesterday to shoot with 24 to 105 Sigma lens. Yeah, it's a little bit difficult. Usually people, traditionally, a zoom lens goes up to 300. So for example, 70 to 300, most people have like a 70 to 200 or a 55 to 200. And when you get beyond 300, you're getting into major bucks. It's really expensive. So here's what you would do after my sip of afternoon espresso. You would get what's called a teleconverter. And a teleconverter fits between your lens and your camera body, and it doubles the distance that you can actually use to photograph the moon. So if you have like, let's just say you have a 55 to 200 millimeter lens, that lens then magically becomes 110 to 400 zoom lens, and then you would photograph that moon at 400. Now, teleconverters come from the companies that create them. For example, Nikon has their own, Sony has their own, Fuji has their own, etc. But you can also get third-party ones. Now, the third-party ones are fine, they're cheaper. The only thing is that they often do not have any electronic communication between the lens and the camera body. So you may not have the ability to do certain automatic functions that you're used to. You may have to do manual focus. But really that's no big deal, because when you're photographing the moon, you often have to do manual focus anyway. And the reason being is because the moon is so tricky to autofocus, simply because there's so much darkness around. Okay, so it's called the 1.5x or the 2x teleconverter. The 1.5x will give you, let's just say at 200, it'll give you 300. And the 2x, meaning 2 times or multiplied by 2, will give a 200 millimeter lens a 400 millimeter view. And this is a very cheap way for you to get excellent moon shots, because you're not buying a new specialized lens that is beyond that 300. Now, if you have a 55 to 300 or a 70 to 300 zoom lens, just use the 300. And then, this is important, everybody, all you need to do is crop the image later in your computer. Now, the reason why I suggest that is because most images live, well, at least when you send them to the public, they live and are appreciated and viewed online, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, or your website, or name whatever, like Pinterest or something. So that means that you can crop extremely tight on that moon, and you would still have plenty of resolution, more than enough for computer viewing. Don't ever be afraid of that. Now, this is not only for moon photography, it's also for wildlife and safari. Let's say you're going on a safari, or you live in Africa and you have those great safari shots. However, your lens was not long enough to capture that distant lion, in the bush or whatever. Just crop in. Now, when I say crop in, you're cropping in for the sake of social media upload or upload to your website. Of course, if you're going to print the picture, then the cropping does have, you are going to lose a little bit of quality if you're printing large. But if you're just showing for Instagram, Facebook, or your website, you can crop in as much as you want and still have plenty of resolution for your social media uploads. Don't worry about it. Do the same thing for the moonshot. Okay. Alessandra, what is the brand of the tripod? Great question. It's Neewer, and that's Neewer. And Neewer, as far as I know, they don't have a physical brick and mortar shop. They are only online. And I've used a lot of their products in the past, and they not only have photography products, but they also have tech products like hard drives and stuff for my Apple, my Mac gear, and I'm always a little bit concerned about these products, because I don't know where they're coming from. And but anyway, I've always liked the Neewer products, and they've always worked out well. And I also say that I use Manfrotto equipment all the time, which is an Italian company, and they do great stuff. Okay, let's see what else we have here. 1 second. BT Philip, is Leica Q2 a good buy for travel photography? Well, I'll tell you. BT Philip, I would love to have a Leica for travel photography. So my answer is a big yes. Now, any Leica is a big thumbs up for me. So it doesn't matter what version it is. The Leicas are premium products, and even the cheapest Leica is still a gem. So I've never owned a Leica. I've always wanted one. And by the way, if anyone is living in Japan who sees this video, maybe either now or when I post it to my YouTube page, or will be visiting Japan when COVID restrictions ease up. When you go to Kyoto, go to the Gion district. That's Gion. And in the Gion district, that's, by the way, where the geishas are usually to be seen. There's a fantastic Leica store that's hidden within the most beautiful traditional Japanese home that I've ever seen. And this Leica store is in Gion, Kyoto, and it is a place to visit, I'll tell you. It's the most beautiful Leica store I've ever seen. And that is where I always admire the $30,000 Canadian. It's probably $20,000 American Leica camera. And I was thinking, you know what? Would I ever spend that money on a Leica? Well, the answer is no, of course, but I would certainly welcome it as a gift. Okay, what is the best lens and setting for moon or astronomy photography? This is this is very different because those two are completely different setups. So, for example, for moon, what I what I usually do is do test shots. So, for example, I would try f8. I like f8 for moon photography. It's not critical, to be honest, but f8 tends to be what we call the sweet spot for lenses. So, if I'm looking for the highest level of detail, if I'm going to print something out, then I would tend to use f8 if I'm using a professional lens, or f11 if I'm using a kit lens, okay? Or a long zoom lens that is what we call a variable aperture lens. Then, using aperture priority, I'm going to attempt to, first of all, I would probably use an auto ISO if I'm hand holding. In fact, I would never hand hold anyway. I'd always use a tripod. So let's just say we're using a tripod. Then I'm going to go to the lowest ISO possible. In that case, it would be the lowest would be ISO 100 for most cameras. For some Fujifilm, that would be 200 or 160. And for the moon, because I'm using a tripod, the shutter speed is going to be variable. Now I'm going to allow the camera to adjust the shutter speed based on its needs. The only issue, and this is for everybody, is that if you don't have a super telephoto lens like the 500 sports photography lens or the 600, you're probably going to end up having to use what we call exposure compensation. That would be the minus button, or the minus slider, or the minus dial. Because there's so much blackness around the moon, the camera is going to make that moon very too bright, and you're not going to see any detail. So you're going to go to the minus side quite a bit, possibly -1, possibly -2 in your exposure compensation dial. Okay, so that will help for the moon photography. Now, astrophotography is a completely different story, and if you want to get, for example, no shooting stars, I mean, the stars totally pinpointed, I would suggest a 1/15th of a second shutter speed, a prime lens like a 35mm f1.4 or a 50mm f1.4 or f1.8 for both of those lenses. And then you're still going to use a tripod. You're going to use the highest ISO possible, and you'll grab the shot. Now, the reason why I suggest the highest ISO possible, and you can, by the way, this is your test shot. And if that looks good, then great. But then keep trying further test shots, reducing the ISO a little bit. And the reason I suggest that is because I want you to go to the highest ISO first for your test shot, because that will probably be the shot that you like, but it'll have a little bit of noise. So then you say, okay, well, if that's good, or if it's a little bit too bright even, then I can certainly bring it down to a lower ISO to get a more crisp type shot with less noise. Okay, hope that helped. Due East Photography, good to see you. Levi, hope all is well. Lucy Bravo, Nana's Photos, welcome. Unleash Your Emotions, good to see you again. Hello, good morning there. Good morning to you. Afternoon, actually, yes, it's just afternoon. Not by much for me on the East Coast. I am at, what am I at, 1:30, but for Toronto, it's 12:30. Levi from Due East Photography says, do you need a special camera to shoot the night? My shutter will not stay open enough to get something good. Actually, your shutter will. I'm going to get you to go to B, which is bulb, or T, which is time, and you can keep your shutter open as long as you want. And for example, I've kept my shutter open for 6 hours once. 6 hours doing night photography using B for bulb. So yes, you can do it, and just check your manual and you'll be all set. Now, this is only going to work if it's at night. If you keep your shutter open in the day or in the late evening or early morning, you could damage your sensor because just so much light is getting into your sensor that it's not going to be good. So make sure it's pitch dark, and this is only for light painting or photographing shooting stars or getting those star trails that sort of arc throughout your picture. So remember, that's B for bulb or T for time. Good question, Levi. Painted by Sunlight. That's the best Instagram name. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you. We're doing a Q&A session. For anyone who's just joining, if you haven't joined before, feel free to ask anything about photography, and I'm happy to answer. Forest Hill T, welcome. When we edit images in Photoshop, does the size resolution decrease? No, it doesn't, and I'll explain that. The only reason why it would decrease when we're editing in Photoshop is if upon export or upon saving, or sorry, prior to saving, we actually save it as a smaller resolution, which normally we wouldn't. So let's just say that you brought your image into Photoshop and you changed the exposure, you changed the color balance, you know, maybe did some saturation work, and you did no cropping, and you just press saved, you're all set. Now, if you cropped the picture, let's just say that you had a normal horizontal picture of a landscape in Photoshop, but you wanted to make that a square for maybe printing as a square or eventually using it as a square for Facebook advertising. Okay, so let's just say that you cropped that picture square and then press save, and then you saved it to your hard drive. And you saved it as the same file name, but with the letter B at the end. What you are going to see is that second save, that square, is going to have a smaller megabyte number. And the reason being is because you chopped out either the left or the right portion of that picture. So there's less pixels, therefore less overall resolution count. Now, you're not losing quality by doing that. You're simply losing that left or right side. So the megapixels of your image is going to appear to be less, but the quality has not changed. Now, when I say the quality hasn't changed, that's only true if you saved it as a TIFF or a PSD. If you saved it as a JPEG, well, it's true that you have reduced the quality a little bit, probably not enough for you to notice if you saved it at JPEG 12. So I hope that answers your question. And if it doesn't, then let me know. Now, about the size, it hasn't reduced the size except for the width dimensions. But again, it doesn't matter because you wanted a square anyway. And that's probably why it's wise in Photoshop to save it as a second image so you keep your original. By the way, here's a good tip for everybody. You can avoid all this problem if you are a Lightroom user, because Lightroom, unlike Photoshop, is a non-destructive editing platform. So you can crop that picture square and then keep it cropped as a square for years, and then go back to the original horizontal later on. And you can always go back to the original using Lightroom. However, if you like Photoshop, which I think is great, then keep doing it. Just make sure you save your image, your original image, and make a duplicate or a copy to make that square or make that whatever. I wanted to do photography. I want to take photos of playing cards. I've been asking around if people want this done. Any tips on getting into things like this? Well, it sounds like a good idea. So playing cards, that means two-dimensional objects. If you're just doing the playing cards itself, it's the easier way is just to scan them to get them into a digital format. However, if you're doing the playing cards, or let's just say any type of small object, for example, what if you wanted to photograph small demi-tasse cups for coffee, or small objects like my earbuds? You're usually going to want to have a macro lens, or at least a lens that allows for what we call close focusing. Now, a macro lens is going to do well for you because you can get very close, but playing cards might be a little bit too large for a macro lens. So what I would suggest you do, Levi, is do a test. And what you would do for a test is place the playing cards on the ground, or on a table, better yet, next to a window, and find out how close your lens will focus before the focus fails. Now, each lens has what we call a closest focusing distance, measured in either inches if you're American or Canadian, or millimeters if you're probably the rest of the world, and or centimeters probably. Yeah, centimeters if you're in metric. And when you discover how close you can get to that subject, ask yourself this: does the camera fill does the subject fill the frame? And if so, then great, you're all set using that lens that you have. If you still feel like, wow, I'm really not getting close enough to my desired product, then you may have to look into some form of dedicated lens that works for macro. But don't spend money on that macro lens unless you're sure that that lens is going to pay for itself. Okay, if you have budget for it, great. But if you don't have budget for it and you're hoping this is to become a business, I would prefer instead that you photograph your subject with, you know, as close as possible. But you may get a whole bunch of empty space around the subject, and then you go in and crop so that your subject, like the playing cards, are very close cropped. Okay, that's the cheaper option because it's free. I hope I answered your question. Scott Reed, welcome. BT Phillip, thank you. I'm happy to help out. Hi, Mark. Could you give some advice on using lens ball? Thanks. I've never used a lens ball, but you know what? I've seen so many of those, and I think if I recall seeing the lens ball, that it comes with a little arm that attaches to what we call the hot shoe. Now, if anyone doesn't know what the term hot shoe is, it's that little section on top of a DSLR or a mirrorless that allows for the insertion of a flash. And I think the lens ball has that that comes with it, or it may be an extra add-on. And if so, then you're just going to place that arm and that lens ball so that the lens ball goes over a little bit the front of the lens, and then you get those really cool upside down effects. Now, I've never used one, so I can't really help you. However, what I'll do is ask anyone out there, because I'm sure at least one person who's listening to me right now has actually used the lens ball. If you have, would you mind tagging GHB 1268, or just saying, GHB, this is what I do for the lens ball? And if you could just add it to the comment section below, we'd all appreciate it. I really should know about it, to be honest, because a lot of people use it. It's quite popular, and I've never used one myself. Painted by Sunlight. The Huawei Leica cameras are good too. Yes, a little note on Leica. Now, Leica is a brilliant company, German. They were the first company to introduce to the world, correct me if I'm wrong, the rangefinder camera, and that was before the war, probably in the 20s or early 30s. And this was a big benefit because you could actually take a camera and put it into your pocket, whereas prior you would have the box cameras, for example, the Kodak Brownie or the bellows type cameras, and they were, even though the bellows type cameras, you could fold them up and they were pocketable, they weren't as quick as the newly invented rangefinder camera from Leica. And this was a real advance, and it was fantastic. And you still see Leica creating the rangefinder cameras, and also Fujifilm create rangefinder cameras as well. And if you're interested to know, the Fujifilm rangefinders that are based off the design of the Leica are the X Pro 3, the X Pro 2, the X Pro 1, of course, and also what they call the X100V, V as in Victor. Also, the X100T, the X100S, the X100F, and the X100 by Fujifilm are all rangefinder designs. Now, the reason I say all this is because Leica started it all. Leica lenses are world renowned for their sharpness, and Huawei, plus I think another company in the world of Android, also make use of Leica, but I'm not sure about that. And the Leica lenses are extremely good. So painted by sunlight, you must have a Huawei, I assume, and you're all set because your Leica lenses are excellent. Very, very good. Joseph Corey, good to see you. Another Canadian, hopefully all is well. Westerly from me. Lucy Bravo, thank you. Thanks so much for the excellent explanation, says Lucy. I'm always happy to help out. Omina, Dewey's Photography says, dang. Now, I don't know if that's a positive or a negative, Levi, so you have to clarify that. That's interesting to know about damage to sensor. Yeah, so BT Philip, when you're at night, don't worry about damaging the sensor if you use B or T, bulb or time, because now let me preface that. If you have a full moon, then you do want to be a little bit careful, but if you don't have a full moon, you can definitely keep the sensor open all night for up to 6 hours, depending on where you are in the world, I suppose. As long as you don't see that little glimpse of light, early morning, then you want to shut off your shutter, because then you're going to be loading light into that sensor and it's just going to be a pure white picture. Okay, so make sure that when you're doing B or T photography, that you're doing it in pitch dark and you'll be all set. Mr. Stick Dude, that's a great name. Pam says, I'm trying to do the low assignment. I don't have much in my yard. Any suggestions other than my solar lights? So Pam, I think you're referring to when you're low, physically low to the ground. And by the way, what Pam's saying, everyone, is in Digital Camera Mastery or one of my other courses, I explain how if you are photographing from a low position, you actually empower the subject matter. And if you're photographing from a higher position down, you are usually disempowering the subject. And I'm talking about more metaphor and feel. Have you ever noticed, everyone, this is very important, when you look through a fashion magazine, that the super popular and super attractive models, they always appear very tall, very self-important, and like they own the world. Well, it's quite possible that these models are no taller than you or I. They look taller and look grand and look empowered because the photographer chose to photograph them from a low position. So the photographer gets down on their knees or crouches down and photographs them upward, which increases their sense of importance. This is very important. If you are wanting to get into fashion photography, you're going to be spending a lot of time crouched or on your knees because you want to empower the subject to a great extent. Now, does this apply to anything else? Well, yes, it does. In my architectural career as an architectural photographer, I do exactly the opposite of what real estate agents do. Real estate agents, and rightly so, they photograph from a high position so that they can see the entire room. I understand that. But architecturally speaking, I like to empower the room by photographing from knee height. So what I'll do is I'll get from the local hardware store just a $5 pair of knee pads. I have my tripod, and from my knee position, you can envision this, which would be what, who knows, 5 feet something. I'm able to photograph the room from that lower position and it makes the room grand. Now it's true that I'm not angling my lens up. I only want a straight lens forward, but that really tends to produce an empowered room. Now Pam says, how do I get this lower aspect or lower angle to empower a subject matter if I don't have anything very interesting to do? So Pam, what I would suggest is that you do a still life. Go inside, get a vase of flowers. If you need to get flowers from your local supermarket, then so be it. Put them in the flower. And I like you to test photographing that vase of flowers from a low position, looking up, straight on, and from a higher position. I think you will agree that when you're photographing from that lower position straight up, those flowers become, and that vase becomes very important. And this may be useful if anyone's wanting to get into product photography and to really empower that subject because they're using it for products or services. They're selling that product. So Pam, I hope that helps. It was a great question. Grid City Magazine, welcome. Good to see you. And if anyone's just joining, this is a Q&A session. If you haven't, if this is your first time joining me and us, feel free to ask any questions you want. Okay, GJXLO, good morning from LA. Hope you're well in LA right now. Mariano, good to see you. Oh, I will experiment with that. Thanks. Excellent. Soda Ajay. Sir, I'm a beginner. Where can I learn Photoshop easily? So Photoshop is a trick and it's not easy. So usually what I would advise is I don't have a photo course on Photoshop, so I can't really send you to any of my online courses. So Scott Kelby is probably a good resource for Photoshop. He's a master at photography. He has tons of books on Photoshop and courses, and you'll get all you need from Scott Kelby, and that's Kelby. And he also has a ton of free resources probably on his YouTube channel. That's my suggestion for you. And if you're a beginner, what I will advise, now I don't want to encourage you to abandon your desire to learn Photoshop because it's very valuable. However, I feel that you will learn better and quicker using Lightroom CC. Now, technically, Adobe calls this Adobe Photoshop Lightroom CC. And in the official title, the word Photoshop is in there because it's part of the Photoshop family. It's part of the image editing family. So I would think that if you're a beginner, I would advise you to start free. Don't put money into something that you don't really know about yet. Here's my progression. Get the Lightroom CC mobile app for Android or iPhone first. Get the free version. Actually, they're all free to start out with, okay? Get that first. Then your second stage is to pay for the monthly fee for your Lightroom mobile app. If you like that, then you go one step more where you get Lightroom for your computer. And that would be your desktop or your laptop. Then you can do some serious editing, okay? And I actually, as a professional for 22 years, photography is my daily scene. I use Photoshop Lightroom CC 90% of the time, maybe 95% of the time. I only use Photoshop for 5% of the time. So if that works for me, then it probably will work for you just fine. In fact, the only time I need Photoshop is if I'm doing graphic design work using layers. That's the only time I need it, to be honest. I hope that helped you. Okay, Andy. Hi, Mark. This is Andy from Germany. Would you please suggest a camera for black and white photography? Leica monochrome is out of my reach. I know where you're coming from. By the way, if we were just talking about Leica about half an hour ago, and Leica make a monochrome camera, and it's a complete gem. It's super expensive, very minimal, and it's like for those who can afford a Lamborghini, they would buy one of these Leicas just because it looks cool. It's so few people can afford it, and it's awesome. In that case, Andy, what I would suggest is that if you want that same vibe, that you get the X Pro 3 by Fujifilm or the X100V, V as in Victor, by Fujifilm, and then you set it to Fuji monochrome. Now, Fujifilm monochrome is a picture profile, and they mimic some of their Fujifilm monochromatic films. And by the way, if anyone used to or still does photograph with Fujifilm, I'm talking the actual film, you will know that their monochromatic film choices are excellent. And for example, back in the day, I used to use Kodak black and white and Fujifilm black and white. I would use T-Max black and white and I'd use some Fujifilm monochromes. And you can actually dial those in, those replicas, within any Fujifilm camera. But if you still want to get that really cool vibe that Leica produces, you can photograph within black and white exclusively using your X Pro 3 or your X100V. The good thing is, if you're shooting in RAW, you can actually later on revert to color, even though you shot in black and white. This is extremely useful, Andy. That's my advice to you. Now, by the way, if anyone's interested in a rangefinder camera that we were talking about, you don't always have to buy the latest and the greatest. For example, the Fujifilm X Pro 3 is awesome, but so is the X Pro 2. The X Pro 2, there's nothing wrong with it. So if you can get a used deal, an open box deal, an overstock deal, a used deal on the X Pro 2, it's amazing for street photography. Further, if you can't afford the X100V as in Victor from Fujifilm and you love street photography, get the X100F or even the T. Okay, and the reason I know this is because I used to use the X100S, and that goes way back, and it was still excellent. It still is. So don't be afraid of buying used as long as you buy from a reputable dealer and they give you a 30-day used warranty on that camera. Great question, by the way. I love talking about Leica, even though I've never owned one. Maybe Santa Claus will give me one someday. Mark Conway Hare joined. Welcome. Mark, have you been to India? Classroom session will be great with you. So I've been to Bangalore once. We have a Bangalore friend online right now. And this is what I would like to put out there is that I also, if anyone wants to know my schedule for photo workshops, international photo workshops, they're 1 week. They're at markhemmings.com. The next one is in Jerusalem, Israel. One after that is in Italy. That would be in Tuscany region of Italy, which includes Lucca, includes Barga, and Florence. That's in November. And then we go into Japan in January. The Caribbean in January, and then Japan in January, and then February is Mexico. And then we get into the annual Greece and so on. And those can all be found at markhemmings.com. However, if there is a location that's not on that list, then I always invite people to create a business that you make money at by simply flying me over. So, for example, you in your own country or your own city, all you'd have to do is just gather like your local camera club and say, okay, well, let's create our own photo workshop and just bring Mark over. You can set your own prices and make it a little business for a 1 week photo workshop or a 3 day or whatever you want. My prices are very reasonable actually, and you just pay for my flight over, some food, some yummy local food, and just a bit of cash for me to bring home to the family, and we're all set. So keep that in mind. And I do that anywhere around the world, and it's fun. It's fun, especially because you guys have the ability to make money from that as well. Because I don't care how much you charge for the course. You guys can get some cash out of it as well. Okay. Having a great fun with the lens ball. Okay, good. Well, Lucy Breveau, that's really good because I forget who asked about it further up, but they wanted to know about the lens ball. And Lucy Breveau, if you have any tips, we'd appreciate it. Thank you. I appreciate it, Mark. Learned a lot from your talk here, Mark. Thank you so much. I'm always happy to help out. Painted by sunlight. Be careful with the lens ball. Oh, good. Okay, here we go. Be careful with the lens ball in sunlight. You are burning hands and woods faster than you think. I have no idea what that refers to, but I'm sure that it's burning hands and wood. Do you mean, does it get hot or something? I'd love to know because I don't know a thing about the lens ball. Joseph Corey, weather is getting better here. No long, no long johns required. By the way, if anyone has no idea what long johns are, it may be a Canadian, one of those great Canadian things like back bacon and what else? Bob and Doug. But long johns, they're long underwear to keep Canadians warm. Interestingly, I'm wearing them right now because I'm outside. Thanks, I've heard of that. Yari Maya, welcome. Dusan Dovic, welcome. I want to do some product photography. How far away should the black background be from the subject to get the true black? Yes. So it's not, I would usually do about a feet or two, but it's really not so much the distance, to be honest. It's more about is the black background receiving any light? So if it's receiving light from a nearby window, well, then you do have to certainly push it farther back, and you may have to actually get a larger black background. But to be honest, it's not that big a deal because even though if the black background has some element of exposure to it, then in Lightroom or whatever app, I just take the shadows and the blacks down just a little bit, and then that disappears completely. So to be honest, Joseph, I don't really bother with that so much, and I do black background product photography quite a bit, and I do that in post-production. And the reason being is that if I was too concerned about getting the black background black to begin with, I may sacrifice some light on the subject. There is a difference, however. If you have the luxury of having a very large sweep, a black background in your studio or in your house, then by all means, push it way back. In fact, push it back as far as you want till that black background becomes in the shadow. And then you have pure black, no problem. If you're limited because you're doing a little portable studio, then just do it after the fact by reducing your shadows and blacks. Okay, hope that helps. Pam says, thanks, Mark. Using a mini tripod helps instead of lying on the ground. Yes, exactly. A mini tripod is very effective, and I use travel tripods, and I love them. They're lightweight, small, I can carry them around. And also, like I showed everyone in the beginning, I use the tabletop mini tripods quite a bit, actually, because I can carry them in my pocket or my small backpack, and they're very convenient. In what situation should I take pictures of the same level of the subject? Great question. Same level would be for product photography. Here's the thing. Shooting low produces a grand empowered effect. Shooting straight on is neutral, but very good. And shooting downward minimizes the potency or the powerful effect. But I want to make sure everyone understands this. When I say shooting down minimizes the grandness of the product, don't ever confuse that with portrait photography for business or portrait photography. Because often the photographer finds that when they're photographing from a higher perspective and the subject is looking up, then it reduces any double chin, and it actually looks good, especially if the shoulders are angled like this. So there's different rules with regards to headshot portraiture or business portraiture. In that case, you are wanting to photograph, the photographer does photograph from a higher position. But if you're shooting fashion or you're wanting to empower your subject, usually straight on or at a lower position is going to create more of an empowered look. And you may sometimes find that what I'm saying doesn't work, but most of the time, if you flip through a fashion magazine, I can guarantee you that 95% of those photos, the photographer was shooting low. Okay, so Instagram gave me a warning. I have about 1 minute left until they shut me off. So I'm just going to try to get through as many questions as I can really quickly. Soda says, "Sir, I'm a beginner. Where can I learn editing photos easily?" Sorry for the sales gimmicky type response, but my website, I have Lightroom Editing Mastery, which is at markhemmings.com, and that's probably what I would suggest for learning about the best of editing using Lightroom. Okay, let's see what else we have here. I have 40 seconds. Painted by light, it's like branding with a magnifying glass. Oh, I see. Okay, makes sense. Lens ball. Okay, let's see what. Lens ball is crystal. It can damage your lens and eyes in direct sun. Good to know. It's a crystal. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Sulfur lens, I agree with that. This other day, I was holding my lens ball. It was intense sun. I quickly felt the burning. Oh, okay. So be careful about lens balls. Okay, my friends, I have 15 seconds left. So I just want to say, I hope you enjoyed today, and let's check back tomorrow, and we'll have fun. Bring your questions, and I'm really excited about seeing you all tomorrow. Have a great day. God bless. Talk soon.